Meeting for Wednesday, July 26, 2023. The first order of business is the approval of the May 10th, 2023 minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to these minutes? Do we have a motion to approve? Second? Second.
Not read them.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain.
I'm going to abstain because I have not read them, and I brought the wrong iPad, so I can't.
The next order of business is the following new business, where we will consider the petition of LCC Telecom Services on behalf of U.S. Cellular for a conditional use permit in a B1C limited business district conditional to allow the construction of a 150-foot tall telecommunications tower at 119 Leroy Bowen Drive. Who is here to speak?
I'll give the presentation. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Planning Commission. The subject property located at 119 Leroy Bowen Drive contains approximately 2 5/10 acres. The property is currently undeveloped. The purpose of the CUP is to allow a 150-foot telecommunications tower in a B1C limited business district conditional. The city's future land use map currently recommends an employment one use for the property. The city's zoning ordinance provides that telecommunications towers are permitted by right in the B1 limited business district if the tower height is 100 feet or less. Towers up to 150 feet may be permitted upon approval of a conditional use permit from City Council. The surrounding area is mostly undeveloped and zoned for commercial and industrial uses. The closest residentially zoned property is an R4 high-density residential district located approximately 600 feet away on Old Mill Road. However, the area is separated by an RC resource conservation area along Dreaming Creek. The proposed construction of the telecommunications tower should have limited impact on the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Who is here to speak on behalf of this petition? If you will state your name, please, and sign in,
Of course.
that would be great. Thank
My name is John Wallace. I'm with LCC Telecom Services, and we've been contracted with U.S. Cellular to do basically real estate for them. One second. U.S. Cellular has a program called the High Rent Relocation Program, and in basically inappropriate cases where there is a alternate location or tower, in this case there is not a tower, there's nothing within a mile of the current one. They seek to find something that's somewhere in the realm of market rates, which the current tower owned by American Tower is not. The existing tower is what we call a self-support. It's a three-legged lattice tower. It has no landscaping around it, not a single shrub, anything. It's just sort of hanging off the side of a hill. If this tower were to be permitted, it would be in line with your current zoning code. I understand that it's not possible to ask for the waiving of a stealth structure, so this would have to be necessarily what we call a monopine, which is a pun on monopole, which is a singular taping structure versus a three-legged one. It's the sleekest visual impact you could have on the community. Putting trees, branches on it just makes it look like a pine tree. The existing lot is fairly, I just went in there this afternoon and tore my shins up. It's full of wild vines, but cedars and pine trees, some deciduous. I think the only thing I would modify on what we've petitioned here is for your urban forester to go in there once the site's put in and see what's left of the existing vegetation. It is really forested in there. I mean, granted, some of these trees are only maybe 6 feet, pine trees, cedars, but they're really close. I just feel like if we put in a formal hedge, it's not going to match what's in there, which is sort of an irregular forest bleeding into Dreaming Creek. which is where we're going to have the stormwater runoff going in that direction. So my recommendation would be we will abide by whatever he would recommend, but he would go in once we've roughed in the compound, put in the fence, and he can see what trees are left versus just automatically imposing our rigid surrounding arborvitae hedge, which doesn't really match what's there and looks formal, like a French garden or something. Let's just see what's left. If we want to supplement something in there to fill in the blanks of something that got torn out for construction, we'll do that. I just trying to make sense here instead of just imposing the line of trees that we have proposed right now. I was trying to meet the code, but I think the urban forester probably would have a better idea what makes sense there. Key to our submittal is a provision in your code 35.2-7310, your standards for CUP. It allows for co-location at reasonable terms, and that's kind of what our complaint is. We have an affidavit from US Cellular's Director of Real Estate. It's notarized, explaining exactly how much higher the rent is. It's typically an industry lease is 30 years. In this case, we have a much longer lease with the owner of this lot. But a typical 30-year lease, if you compare apples to apples, what the savings would be, it's over $2 million and I think 4 times the amount. It's just, you add these sites up across the nation, it just becomes unreasonable. It's just kind of have to think of it as a vertical real estate, a strip mall that goes up instead of horizontally, and just over the years, the dinging of even your own improvements, you get charged for that, and they're just unwilling to renegotiate. So again, we're not just trying to pick any site and say, hey, you have an economic provision, let us go there. We did think about this. So we sought out a location at the end of a cul-de-sac. It drops off into a creek. If anything, it's probably the most challenging coverage area, just the way the terrain drops steeply there. The tower being right on it at least provides any kids down there or whatever, and as well as the residential to the north of there. It'll continue to cover the area of Graves Mill and Lynchburg Expressway, which is basically the intersection that's covering. There's a Home Depot, and it's mainly office and commercial. I guess I'll just shut up and take questions.
Thank you. We might be asking you some questions in just a minute. I guess there's nobody else here to speak in favor of the petition. There's nobody here to speak in opposition. Do we have anything that came in email-wise or? No. So I guess we will close the hearing, the public hearing, and commissioners can now ask questions.
Great. I have a question. So you can come back up. So when I look at this pole, you see the pole and then the structure on the top. And I listened to council when this was put out to them. I think one of the things I heard was the view shed is an issue for some, and I understand that. How many more antennas will go on that? I know that a lot of poles actually will get multiple antennas, one on top of the other. Is that something that you'll have provisions for?
Yes. So the tower is designed for co-location, right? It's conceivably the people on the existing tower would all abandon that for better market rates and go over to it. And I think you have an abandonment clause so that the other tower would have to come down.
I guess I'm asking more what
this
could it look like?
This tower will have, let's say, up to 4 slots. So the platform you see is just something that allows horizontal separation between typically 3 antennas per 3 directions. And that's generally the layout of radio frequency coverage. They do this and they honeycomb the area with these 3 directions, and they'll kind of go like that. So you'll see panel antennas, and there'll be little boxes behind it called RRUs, remote radio units or heads. The trees, branches would be planted around that, to try to disguise it. The antennas themselves can also be painted with RF transparent paint.
So there are going to be branches? It is going to be
So you
tree-like.
require a stealth, which I don't know how I missed that. You require a stealth structure. So the photo simulation you saw, you'll now have to picture a pine tree
Okay.
that jutting up above
So
the.
it will be a tree?
Correct.
Or-
Again, so what we call a monopine versus a monopole. So that's what I was referring to.
Pines
It's gonna,
that don't look like
it's gonna,
real pines.
it has to be a pine because you're not gonna have deciduous leaves in the fall, right? I mean, they don't make those anyway. They're always a monopine, a pine tree, so.
And you're suggesting to not do the.
It's just
square-
expensive, I just prefer not to, but I think your code, I believe Rachel said it's not even within your purview to waive that condition. It has to be a stealth something.
Yes, so the tower itself has to have a stealth design, and that's in the ordinance, and that's any standard process project, so anything that requires a CUP. In certain cases where we can administratively approve these, where it doesn't have to go through a public hearing process, stealth is just recommended because those are lower, and they're also in different zoning settings that, it would be more appropriate. So stealth is required. The ordinance defines that as trying to blend in with wherever it is. There are different types of stealth. There's really no other option than a pine in this case because it is sort of a forested area, but, in different settings, like out west, they have cacti poles, monopoles. In some rural areas, they do sort of a silo look, that sort of thing, but in this case, we'd be looking at a pine. I think what you're referring to, Chair, is that you were talking about the urban forester getting involved with, once you kind of clear the site, evaluating what trees are left, because our ordinance does require a 6-foot screening around the base of the structure. So whatever security fencing is there, it needs to have at least a 6-foot evergreen fence.
That's what I was suggesting.
Oh, okay.
I was asking about, and I thought you might have said you were thinking that y'all didn't want to do that.
No. What I'm suggesting, what we have proposed, Rich, would you mind putting up the site plan with it? We have this French garden design of formal, just a hedge going around it. What's there are cedars and pines with some deciduous, and they're all over the site. So even if you cleared just for our 60 by 60, there are going to be these abutting the fence. What I'm suggesting is we preserve what's there. And a lot of it would be taller than what we'd plan
Got it.
anyway. And then if there's gaps,
Add to it.
view shed gaps, let's supplement, and put in there, and whatever the urban forester thinks is appropriate. So I'm petitioning that your condition would be, per the urban forester's post-installation, to approve a landscaping plan at that point.
And that's not atypical of something we would do during the site planning process anyway. We always allow existing vegetation to count towards any screening or landscaping requirement. So my thought is Planning Commission doesn't have to explicitly put that in as a condition, but you can if you want.
I've got a question.
Sure.
So just to make sure I understand, the current ordinance requires that the whole tower be disguised as, camouflaged as something, in this case, evergreen. Is that right?
Stealth. I mean, it doesn't
Stealth.
have to be evergreen, but that's
In
what's
this
going
case, it would be
to, that's what's
stealth
going to be
because-
here, right?
Right. So the corresponding question to that is, what's around it? I mean, if you've got 30, 40-foot tall trees, this is a 150-foot tower. You're going to have a 150-foot tall disguised pine standing all by its lonesome in the middle of a...
It's going to look redwoodish. I'm not going to lie to you, and I don't think
What
they're
about
native
just painting it
to
a
the
very
state.
light gray or something,
Yeah, so the site's been graded at some point. I mean, and so some of these trees are younger that I'm pointing out but they're still 6-8 feet tall. They're worth keeping, just for screening what's there. So is it going to fit in with that? I don't know how tall these pines are going to get, but probably not 150 feet.
60 feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to look like
I mean, I've seen these disguised,
Yeah.
they actually look pretty good when they're in a forest, but when standing on by itself in the top of the hill or
That's-
something.
What,
Is it what looks better? You know,
I
like
don't
a big-
know, maybe
you
just
know,
a light gray pole,
a
maybe?
big pole in the middle,
Or a fake tree.
Yeah, and so we council touched on that a little bit when I briefed them on this, and it's gonna be pretty obvious that I mean, I'm sure you've seen them where they stick out above the tree line.
Christmas lights on it or something, once a year.
When it sticks out above the tree line, it's hard to really make it blend in, but that is what the ordinance requires.
ordinance?
Yes, that's the one that was adopted in I believe it was 2019, or was 20,
I feel like we
21.
voted on something not too long ago where it wasn't a tree. Like it was.
2021.
It was in 21.
Yeah. There was a petition, I think it was off Beverly Hills Circle. I think that was a lot shorter.
Okay, so it wasn't the same pine. It wasn't a pine. 'Cause
I don't believe
remember-
that, I don't believe that one required stealth.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, maybe I'm thinking that may have been adopted in 2019 and we updated the ordinance in 2021 before this requirement. So
Okay.
I think, now that you're jogging my memory, I think that was before. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was before this requirement.
This is the first time I've heard of the ordinance having to do with like a tree, like stealth, whatever.
so, I mean, that's why we drew it up the way we did. I mean, it doesn't, it's not gonna fool anyone, but the requirement is that, I mean, I guess the question is, can you or the city council waive it? And it sounds like your council said they can't.
It's not explicitly delegated to
Well,
them.
stealth might, I mean, potentially stealth is kind of a loose definition. I mean, if you painted it something that is like a
Our-
very light gray, it might be less
I mean,
noticeable.
it is
you know?
galvanized and it'll fade to a light gray, right? I mean, so, I mean.
Just a thought.
You're right. I mean, we could paint it whatever color you'd want. But, I mean, the sky's gray, it's blue, I mean, you know.
That's what I'm saying, something very light. You'd still see it, but it'd be less
Yeah.
noticeable maybe than a giant fake.
The typical argument I make with the galvanized is that you got the high tension poles everywhere, right? I mean, you're used, or even highway lights, you're used to seeing the galvanized still, right? It's, the eye's used to seeing that
Yeah.
vertical thing, and it just, because it's gray and it's not shiny, the galvanized will get dull. It just is about as less visible as you can get. You know, that's the color, for whatever reason.
Between a rock and a hard place, because unless it's 150 feet high, you're not gonna get the transmission that you need to get, right?
Correct.
So, in my mind, it would seem to me that based on the businesses and based on the traffic, if you will, of that area, you're gonna need to have some sort of supplement of some type. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how I can change physics enough to where we don't end up with this kind of a solution, and I don't know that answer exists.
Yeah, so this is part of an existing mature network. So there are certain heights all around it, right? And it needs to cover halfway to all those surrounding honeycomb sites. So yeah, it actually RF wanted 160, but the height limit is 150, so we're
Is it
already.
is it a 5G tower design? Is that what it is?
It'll have all the latest, right? I mean, eventually that'll be supplemented, I
Have you
mean,
gotten any
supplanted by
pushback, I
some.
guess, from like the Caterpillar clubhouses?
It's, you know, everyone's a little too focused on 5G. That's going to
Right.
be surpassed sooner than later, right? It's just the next generation of making it go faster so everyone can use their phone to download and stream.
But I mean, because I remember the same meeting that you were talking about earlier, Kenzie, where I guess my learning was how close they needed to be, so that, how close the towers needed to be so that they could operate.
I mean,
effectively.
that's, you know, country, they could be 10 miles apart. In the city, you may, like in the Loop in Chicago, you might see them every block.
Right.
Yeah, and then it's a totally different technology for that level. But at this point, in this city, because that's even on the edge of your city, right? That's not downtown. This is pretty far out there on the edge of Lynchburg. I would say that's probably every 2 miles, maybe, something like that, 2 to 3.
But from what I understand, we're not putting this tower up because there's a lack of transmission available. We were putting it up to save your company money.
Right.
That, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what they're doing. Because they're already leasing a tower that's within
We're leasing
mile.
space on an existing
Right, so,
tower.
I mean, there's already, service to your clients, but the purpose of this is to save you money.
Right.
Right.
And the only thing you're gaining would be that this is now going to be per your latest code versus the existing tower.
Right, you'll have your tower and you'll rent it out to other people.
And it
have
is,
more people.
it is, yes, and
Yeah.
it is at least, I think, in a better location than the existing
I
one.
mean, it makes sense. Like, I agree. You did your due diligence. You're doing everything the right way. You found a spot that is pretty inconspicuous. But at the end of the day, that is why we're voting on this, is to save them money.
So what we're voting on, I don't have it in front of me, but is to allow him to do what he's asking to
The
do.
height extension.
Yeah.
To
Okay.
put a brand new tower
Okay.
up.
But they
I-
could put it up if it was below 100 feet.
Correct.
We wouldn't have to be here.
I
That's
would
correct.
So it's really, we're voting for the extension.
like to make a motion to approve the petition.
Yeah, just one more comment. I think in general we're supportive. The question is, what is stealth? And I would defer to planning staff and the engineers to figure out the best stealth. It is a little bit of opinion. And I do like the idea of getting the forester involved with the landscaping, and whether or not we want to make that explicit or if that just makes things too cumbersome. I'm fine either way. But I think both and that is also tied into visibility. So whether we make those more explicit or we just say we're relying on them to hide things as best as possible using planning staff and using the urban forester. I think that's the ultimate goal. And I'm fine whether we make it explicit or we just leave it to be handled internally.
Well, and the recommendation from planning is that we accept this petition, in compliance with the site plan entitled such and such, dated July 3rd, but the site plan, as we received it, is not exactly what is gonna be done, because it's a different picture, and so I don't know, how do we have to change how we present this, or how we vote on it?
We say substantial compliance, to give ourselves and the petitioner a little bit of wiggle room when they get into full design. Planning Commission could also add the condition that the stealth requirement will be met, or that the required landscaping and screening shall be supplemented with existing vegetation in coordination with the city's urban forester.
Is that already part of the design?
Not really.
What's
That
that?
was added.
No, yeah, the
Because we didn't,
design
we didn't
is,
show any landscaping, so we
Yeah.
added the,
it's just
the
all
hedge.
new stuff.
I mean, I
So
think,
this is what our code requires. This is shows the 6-foot evergreen screening. It is common practice for us to work with people on that if there's existing vegetation on site at the site plan phase. But I think those two conditions are totally reasonable. The planning commission is more
Right.
comfortable with them.
and I think also our goal is to make this as easy as possible for council. If it's explicit, you don't have to go through this discussion again. So I would support putting some type of wordage in like that.
Is that a
Okay,
friendly
so can we-
amendment?
so
Yeah.
Should we amend,
If,
your
if,
motion
if
to
Commissioner
include-
Marion is
to
okay with
include
that?
the stealth requirement, and that the design will use existing vegetation and be supplemented with new per the recommendations from the forestry planning and planning department?
Should we add in the stealth language that it should be decided as discussed internally by, I guess it'd be discussed anyway, by city staff, I think the current plan right now was to build this thing as a fake tree, right? But are we largely in agreement that is probably not the ideal?
Yeah, so our ordinance does, it defines stealth for this section specifically. Refers to a wireless structure and wireless facility that is designed in such a way to effectively blend into the environment in which that structure is proposed to be located. Examples of stealth include, but are not limited to, a wireless support structure in a wooded area that is designed to look like a tree, structure encased in a flagpole, a structure on a church that is designed to look like a bell tower or church steeple, or a structure in an agricultural area that is designed to look like a farm silo. My,
Right? Or
Yeah.
does it?
Well, the tree, I mean, I don't think we don't have any choice.
yeah, so it is, the ordinance doesn't give planning commission authority to
Right.
waive or modify in this case. Since it is already a code requirement, and council is aware of that as well, I don't think you need to add it.
So I would second the motion as you laid out then, those two conditions. Yeah.
Well, the stealth condition was already there,
Right.
right? So we don't need that.
Well,
But the-
it's a requirement, but not a
Right.
explicit
So
condition,
we can
but
put it
yeah.
in, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the conditions, to be clear for the motion, are substantial compliance with the site plan and essentially to work with the urban forester on the existing landscaping and supplement that. Is that correct,
Yes.
Commissioner Mary? Okay. And then
And I second
Chair,
that.
okay.
And just for the record, I'm fine with a tree, as ridiculous looking as it will be. It gives kids something to laugh at and point at. Oh, there's a tree, and, you know.
This is a learning opportunity, see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Is the first one?
And
Is this the first one
since
around
this
here?
code was changed-
It's not the first one.
I've seen
I haven't
others
seen
in
one
the
out
region,
here.
but not.
Yeah.
Actually, I was on vacation, just a little side note, and they have a bunch of these things that look like pine trees, and every single one of them looks like the fake
Yeah.
monopoles. Like, I'm in a land full of these monopole trees, so.
I'll be honest, guys, personally, the question, and I know there's gonna be some disagreement, the question is which is more of an eyesore? A white tower or a giant fake pine tree that sits 75 feet above all the surrounding that we can laugh at?
Are we
So,
actually allowed to
just a
say
thought.
it can't be a pine tree?
Well, because
wait,
compliance with
wait,
Can we make it a
stone,
silo?
Tell me, correct from, or clarify for me, it seems to me that what we've said is, we're gonna let the planning department execute this in accordance with the site plan, you know.
In accordance with
In
code.
accordance with the.
their
with your
interpretation of
So-
what, yeah.
Which is no different than if we were talking about, you know, something else. Did I misunderstand that part? Because, I mean, I think that's where you guys shine, and I think that's something that we've used in the past, so I feel like. Right, we can't recommend, so you know, that, you know, if the question is, do we make some explicit commentary? I feel comfortable having you guys,
Yeah, I do too.
you know, interpret this, because I think also it's gonna evolve. Because I don't think, I mean, there's nothing that we've ever done that we haven't thought we could do better or do differently in the future, and I'm gonna give you all the room to be able to make that happen, if that makes sense.
I think you expressed my point.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
put it in the record that we don't like the fake pine look, but it is what it is.
Proposal.
Yeah, it looks like my grandmother's Christmas tree, we got a problem.
I guess what we're saying, we're comfortable with city staff defining stealth,
Okay,
or satisfying
Yeah.
stealth.
Yes.
great.
Okay, any other discussion? I'm gonna take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And good luck at city council.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay, the next order of business is the consideration of naming a street within a new subdivision located off of Mimosa Drive as Lynn Lane.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of Planning Commission, the Daily Group is petitioning to name a new street as Lynn Lane. The street will be located in the Mimosa Place subdivision located off of Mimosa Drive at what is currently 2016, 2020, and 2028 Mimosa Drive. The Technical Review Committee reviewed the petition on June 20th and had no comments of concern. The name is brought before you for comment.
So this is a brand-new subdivision?
Yeah, it's still under review, so it hasn't been approved yet, but part of that process is getting the name approved.
Okay. So, yeah, this hasn't come before the TRC?
The subdivision has.
It has,
But
okay.
it's still in review, so it still has corrections needed.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have no issues with the name.
I don't know any Lynn's that I dislike, so I say yes. That's a good one.
Sounds
My
good.
mother-in-law is a great lady. Her name's Linda. By the way.
We already have a Linda.
Yeah, I can't do that.
That's
All right, any other comments about Lynn? Is there any other business, any new or old business?
Just an update, we are still trying to nail down the date and venue for your comprehensive plan kickoff, but you should be hearing about that very soon, so.
I thought we had the date, but not the time.
Looking at the 31st of August is the front runner, but I've still got to have a place to put you that day, so haven't put an official word out yet.
So, yeah, that 31st date, is that gonna be like an evening thing, or is it during the day?
During the day.
Okay.
If,
Yeah, because like sooner than later, because like my
Yeah.
my calendar.
oh, I
fills
know,
up,
I know,
but, you
it's
know,
it's
it
hard
just,
to schedule during the summer, calendar's
yeah,
filling
well,
up.
and just with work and
Yeah,
stuff, like,
sure.
because I've already got something planned for that evening, but,
Okay.
okay.
Is it the 31st?
Yes,
August
Yikes.
31st.
not
I had the wrong day.
of July,
this one.
no, August.
All right, so during the day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, take a look at that. Please email Anna if for some reason during the day on the 31st doesn't work. I know a couple of you had said it doesn't, but
Do you think we could be done by 4?
probably, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, so that's just the only update from
Okay.
staff.
And I know there's a meeting, do we have something on the agenda for
Yes, you will.
for September, what is it? Oh, no, August 9th. Do we have something August 9th?
Pulling up our schedule. Are you ready? We did end up moving that. No, you probably will not be having a meeting on August 9th.
Okay. All right, well, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?